Hello, team, and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics and Greg Terry experience live stream. It's been a little bit of time since then. I can't. My dad's just turned up, and he's just through there. I can't speak to you, my father. No, I'm just starting a live. I think he's going to stand in the kitchen and just wait for me to finish.
Johnny, I am your father.
No, yeah, that is yes. Anyway, just my dad has totally thrown me, and he's standing looking at me.
Johnny, I am your father.
So we have a live stream today where we are going to introduce we're going to introduce a charity fundraiser that is almost finished. To the point where it's been so successful that we're actually going to double it. So just to let you know what we're going to be talking about, as well as doing an update and talking about Ukraine, all the usual stuff that Greg and I usually talk about. But we are going to really introduce to people who already know about this, the NAFO fundraiser with ATP Geopolitics and the 69th Sniffing Brigade campaign. This is for, well, it was originally for a truck, one NAFO truck. Of course, now, well, I say of course, many might well already know that we have almost made that whole donation. We're at 18,554 euros out of 19,000. So that is insane, given that I haven't even yet properly introduced this. So what we've done, and we've got verification of this from the people in the know, we are going to extend that to 2 trucks, and that is going to be exactly what they want. We've asked them whether they wanted drones rather than the second truck, and they said they actually want a second truck for their drone unit. So that's going to be really useful, and all the usual things apply in terms of what your donations get. It will update on the website. She's just waiting for a second video because they're going to have to change this initial video from the 12th NGU. So this is the 12th NGU there. I'll play that. I don't get sound on it just through the way I'm doing it at the moment, but I will play that for you. And the website will update, but at the moment, the 19,000 euro total will be able to be exceeded. So we can just go past that, continue fundraising today, and we're going to have to work towards a 19,000 euro, another 19,000 euro target, which is phenomenal. I never imagined that the community would be so amazing as to have almost finished the initial fundraising by the time I've introduced it formally. But there you go.
Well,
thank you.
Let me interject here, Johnny. This is called the goodness of people. And
Yeah.
I know sometimes we lose sight of that when all we see every day is bad news, or all we see is conflict. We read about corruption. We read about this country now going to invade this country. And it's all we see. It's all we hear. But when you come down to it, and we can take politics out of the picture, we can take backgrounds out of the picture, humanity is good and people care. And it is not a surprise for me at all that the one vehicle was completed quickly, and that the second vehicle will now come along nicely with a little bit of work. Why? Because there, as Professor Gertis, he calls it this way, there is a pent-up demand where people have an innate desire to help hurting people. And working through the YouTube community that includes you and I and others, there's about, I don't know, Gertis counted them, there's about 30 pro-Ukraine YouTubers that have focused. Many of us partnered together. Most of us are friends. And we have made a decision to be an avenue through which people of the world can help. Because if it wasn't for that, it would be very difficult for the world to actually help. One of the reasons being, and I've been having to deal with this some on my channel, and I'm glad to help and been helping people in my Discord. There is a lot of scamming out there. And unfortunately, due to the scamming, good people will fall through the cracks. That is why when you get a hold of a good organization like NAFO 69th Sniffing Brigade, it's trustworthy. I have physically seen dozens and dozens and dozens of their vehicles on the front. Just on the last run, I was there hanging out with some guys. I went out in the driveway, and there's a NAFO truck with Jake Bro's face on the side of it. So I called.
Really?
Yeah. So I called Jake. I said, "You want to see your vehicle in the front?" "Yeah, dude." And so, you know, showed him his vehicle in the front. So it works. And when you find something that works, it allows people an avenue to do what's good. And then at that point, you know what? €5, €10, €20. You can pick up a gift in that program, or better stated, a token of appreciation. And this is just a good thing. So I salute you in ATP Geopolitics for knocking out of the park the first one, and the second one will happen the same, because you have a wonderful community. We all do have people that care, and it'll surprise you how quickly the second one will go as well.
Yeah, I mean, I am, you know, worried that obviously these things tail off, don't they? Everyone's excited at the beginning, and now that we've doubled it, that's a whole other truck. And you know, will we be able to meet that target? I don't know, but you know, we've got to try these things.
The answer is yes. And never again will I hear come out of your mouth doubt and a moment of perplexity.
Yeah, I'm not one to doubt much. I spend my life concerning myself with doubt.
Your entire life is built on the premise of doubting everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that a chair you're sitting in? I don't know. Is that my father standing in front of me? I'm trying to figure that out as I go off camera, and Greg keeps talking. Listen, we've got you figured out, JP, but I'm telling you, stick with it. You know, I can speak to you out of experience here, and the experience is the armored vehicle project. You know, we thought one, and you and I were just here 30 seconds before going live, and Zhenya was calling us, giving us tours of some truck modifications. So it happens. Yeah. And people are generally good natured, and it'll happen. So kudos on the number one, and we'll all help. Anyone in here in my channel as well, because we're both co-streaming. Welcome to all of you this morning on my channel. We support Johnny, and I are partners. So if you feel that you want to go and help Johnny knock out that second NAFO truck, please do. We are full-born partners. This is one of the few individuals I've taken to the very front. And out of my list of people to take to the front, and I do have a list, number one is always Zhenya, because he'll make sure I come back alive. Number two is Johnny Pierce, because even though he has health issues, the man has a heart of a lion. And that's who I want to go to the front with. So thank you, JP.
Let's do it. Next year, I have a plan for next year, my friend. And
beautiful.
Great to
well, I'm developing a mobile drone jammer to go on the front of my chest, and on the back of my chest, I'm developing like a little sitting stool that I can set you in on my back, and we can just roll along the front line, protected from drones, and I'm carrying Johnny. We're ready to go, buddy.
I'm like the guy with no legs, except I do have legs and I'm a bit heavier. But the guy with no legs in Alien Resurrection that gets carried by another guy, or Mad Max 2 for some film references, some people without legs that get carried around by other people. Anyway, so I please support the project by going to the link, which I'm pretty sure is in the description below. I will double any significant donation up to. I don't know what to say here, but let me know how much you've donated in this stream, and you know, the biggest one I will do my best to double. But then if someone says £5,000, I'm like, oh, I'm not sure I can double that. But do you know what I mean? Like I'd love to challenge me with what I can double of your donations, and that would be absolutely fabulous. Thank you already to people who've donated to both our channels. Donkon Yu has already chipped in for you working but listening. Slava Ukraini. Thank you to the Weasel for mine for that super sticker. Thank you to Petra Olsen for yours. She is the one who I believe is donating for her cigarette money. Is that correct?
That is the Swedish non-smoking initiative. I really am considering getting T-shirts, because that phrase, even everybody's channel I go to now, Petra's a legend. It's just like you said, isn't that the non-smoking one? So yes, that is the Swedish non-smoking initiative supporting Ukraine. Thank you, Pat.
Amazing. So I just got a message from Benny Pie, who's been off the radar for a couple of days ill, so just telling him I'm live. He helps me out with a lot of my YouTube stufferoonies.
Beautiful.
And we also have this amazing Goose Springsteen. That's amazing. Thank you for all your hard work, guys. JP, not to put you on the spot, but as an atheist philosopher working with Greg, giving you a different perspective, regardless of anything supernatural, about the ability of religious networks to do good. It's a really great question, by the way, Goose. I've always been of the opinion that good people do good things, irrespective of what they believe. You know, there are good people of all different religions and no religion, and in between religions and not sure. And good people just do good things. And I don't think it. Greg might disagree, but I don't think it takes God to do good things. I think it takes good people to do good things. And it also, you know, when people stand by and don't do things, you know, what is it? What's that saying, Greg? Where it's like bad things happen when people stand by and don't do anything. That kind of mantra it is also really important. Like it's incumbent upon us not to ignore problems and to help where we can if we want the world to be a better place. And I want the world to be a better place. And so, you know, I have my reasons for doing good. Greg has his reasons for doing good. But I think at heart, it comes from being good people, being kind, generous people. And I hope that this community is full of people like that, no matter what you ultimately believe. However, I will say in answer to that question as well, that, you know, I wouldn't ever call myself a militant atheist, but I was always someone that was challenging and arguing with people, because you can't go through life believing the wrong thing. So I have to correct you. I have to course correct you. Would have been what I was like 10 years ago. So it's like arguments all over the place. Now I'm like, I can sit in the back of the battle bus with Greg and not be bothered that it's like, you know, the two ministers in front of me and me in the back seat, like believing completely different things. It's that commonality that joins us. And I think that's kind of where I'm at these days, is much more of like, if we're morally on the same page, then I don't have a problem with anyone on earth. You know, if our morality is broadly aligned, that's what's important about life. So hopefully that answers your question. I don't know if Greg's got anything to answer.
Well, I would say this Anglo-Irish statesman, and for most of his life living in Great Britain, Edmund Burke is who you're referring to. He said the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And I think this is what we're experiencing together. And let's be honest, everybody's on a journey. And the only people that I do not want to run with are those that will not recognize they're on a journey. And that is a journey of discovery. I would highly recommend that you stay away from anybody that would ever say, I know it all, I'm right, you're all wrong. That's not who you want to hang around with. But if you can hang around with somebody, even like a Johnny Pierce, who says, you know, in principle, I completely disagree with Greg. However, I just have to say that I'm searching and hunting and figuring, and this is my perspective, this is my understanding, and I'm working to learn and develop it more. It's the same way everybody is doing. If you're not doing that, then you're not growing in whatever avenue you're trying to get down. When you hear this phrase, I'm right, you're all wrong, everything I do is right, look at me, follow me, I'm right, you're wrong, that is not Johnny Pierce or me. That's Vladimir Putin. And this is what we want to avoid. That's a completely different game set. What I can tell you guys is this, and I stated at the beginning, the number one person on my list to take to the front with me is Johnny Pierce. That's all you need to hear. And that is not a joke. That's not because we're in here together. That has nothing to do with it. I say that everywhere. He has the heart of a lion. He has the heart of a lion, stumbling across a snowy field embankment, standing over his Zoom. I've got to get there to get this picture. Stocking hat leaning off, camera sidewise. Pierre DuPont rolling up a ciggy. It was made for big screen movie. We wrapped around a Kherson where the weather's completely different and coming in at night, and Johnny's got to climb up stairs. Wow, what a long flight of stairs. But
Yeah,
he didn't stop.
yeah,
And he never
that
complained.
that
Never.
was that was a really interesting time as well, because there was a sound of the whoomp whoomp of artillery
Oh yes.
ingoing and outgoing and incoming. And you know, particularly the second night we're in Kherson, my room was rattling, like proper rattling with ordnance. And that was, and actually I did I say this to you before? I know I said it to Pierre when Pierre came in for a cup of tea recently. I was like, I don't know that I would go to Kherson anymore, like the next time round, because
We
it
wouldn't
is,
take you.
no, it is just, it is too dangerous with the drones, not with artillery and whatnot. I mean, that's probably as dangerous as it was, which was dangerous, right? But in terms of being hunted, like we went out for a cup of coffee, didn't we? You know, it's a little cafe. I took a lovely cup of tea, and I was just thinking, now I don't
Just a
know.
lovely cup of tea. Just a lovely cup of tea.
Lovely cup of tea, mate. It was gorgeous. But I don't know that would be advisable now. When you know the stats of the number of people that are being hit purposefully by these drone crews who are either training on, well, it's not either or, it's both. I think they're psychotic and training on civilians to get their skills up before they take them to the battlefront. Like, that is one of the theories of what they're doing in Kherson, just hunting down people. They're following cars so they can, you know, get to know how to follow moving vehicles and then hitting civilians. It's like, well, that could.
The bottom line is, well, first of all, Kevin Forrest in the chat, can you share the NAFO donation link on your social media? The answer to that is yes.
It's on the description to the video below. It should be the first
but he was
link.
asking if he could share it on his, and the answer is yes. But secondly, back speaking about Kherson, the Kherson that I took you in is not the Kherson that is there today. You can remember, even at the time that we took you in, Johnny, the surprisingly few people that were there, even at that time. That huge city of 250,000, 300,000 people pre-war was basically empty at that time. My guess at that time, between 10 and 15,000 people were still there, up to 20. I'm very, very confident now that the maximum amount of civilians and people that are remaining in Kherson, maximum right now is 5,000. And people ask, okay, you know, where do you get these numbers? You throw out a lot of numbers. Well, let's see. I go there nonstop. Zhenya goes there nonstop. And we have a very close person that lives inside Kherson that funnels us all this information. So between personally visiting it and having people on the ground, that is where we get our numbers. So I do not listen to numbers on anything if I have a physical, in this case, Khersonite living inside the city and it's their hometown. They know the deal. And the city is basically empty, especially now because the strategy has changed and it's really being used as a testing ground. And it's ridiculously a terrible situation. In fact, Johnny, to speak to that, and guys in my Discord know, I'm, or on the live, maybe on the video yesterday, I mentioned it. I'm putting together a piece on Kherson right now. Some of the streets that we drove you down, are completely grown over now. It would look like
Wow,
post-apocalyptic. The trees,
zombie film type thing,
the trees, because it's done. The trees have now started to overtake the roads and the grass growing through the roads.
Wow,
It's especially
that's
down there close to the river where we took you, and you know that where we stayed was very close to the river,
very close to the river. Which is the front, for those who don't know. In fact, let's bring that up.
Yeah, do it.
Just to give people a sense of where we are. By the way, just to let you know, Tochny, so the guys in Tochny, Andrew Perpetua, all those kind of people, I've interviewed a bunch of the Tochny crew. Brendan Kelly, I've interviewed twice on drone strikes in Kherson that he is counting. So he's getting the data on all of this. There are two excellent articles. They're heartbreaking. The first one was Barbarians on a, no, it's not. It's the Hounds of Zed. So that was his first article on August 31st. Then he's updated that with a further article, Preying on the Innocent Drone preying on the innocent. Drone pilots circle like vultures over Kherson's most vulnerable. And there's lots of data in here looking at the amount of strikes, looking at, I mean, they've done an incredible job of finding out who's posting these, the units that are doing them. There's loads of amazing research here in looking at what their methods are, what they're looking at achieving, and all this stuff. They are collecting data. Really, really good stuff there. It's macabre, it's horrible, but it's really important work that they're doing. But yeah, as I'm sure you all know, Kherson, sorry, my map is struggling a little bit at the moment in terms of all the browsers struggling. But anyway, Kherson is down here on the Dnipro River. And I mean, I probably shouldn't say where we stayed, but it was very close to the river. And the river is that effectively the front line where you've got the Russians over here firing off probably. Do they fire mortars into there at all?
Oh, yes, they're firing everything into there. In fact, last night we had 6 wounded last night. It's just nonstop. You know, right now the drones are getting a lot of the attention because of the attention to it, and rightfully so, with the attack on civilians riding in cars, kids walking down the street, older people riding a bicycle, coming in and out of the kiosks, trying to get a loaf of bread. That's where the attention is being paid. Where we actually stayed on purpose was down to the right of the inn in Kherson, somewhere. So to the right of the inn of Kherson, and then take a right and come down toward the river. And that's a very large area there. So in that area is where we stay. And the reason, you know, your viewers, my viewers, they kind of get it for the most part why we do what we do. But the reason we stay that close actually is strategic, because from the green line up there, go straight up. You see the green road. Yes, that green road up there. You were on it. It just comes down. That's the top of the hill, guys. And from there, everything goes downhill all the way to the river. Johnny has witnessed that geography. It is just basically a straight downhill ride. So it's like the targeting in a fishbowl over here on the southern Ukraine. They do not have an elevation gain on the Russian controlled side of the river, but they're shooting at basically a target that's leaning up against them. And the reason we stay so close is we're actually, where we stay, we have a safe place to park our vehicle. Unfortunately, it's because it's blocked by other buildings, and we stay on lower floors that are blocked by other buildings. So really the only way we could be struck there is a direct drop down of an ordnance. So that would being careful of FPV drones and just something random that was to drop directly down. So for the most part, when we were taking Johnny there were no FPV drones flying in Kherson.
No, not really.
And now it's a huge amount flying in Kherson.
Just to let people know that they have updated the website with the 38,000. It's amazing, 162 donations. So another 12 donations have come in since we started this stream. Thank you. I think the highest one so far, correct me if I'm wrong, let me know if you've donated more, is 204 euros, and I will double that. Yeah, that is what we're at so far. Let me know if you are donating a large. Well, let me know if you are donating at all. Thank you so much. Thanks to X Penguin. It's incredible. You're a total legend. Really appreciate all of you supporting in the ways that you all are. And I just a random shout out to one of my atypical philosopher mates that we haven't done it for a quite long time, but he's in the chat. So Adam, thanks for being in the chat, my friend. How are you, dude? We go down the pub and we talk. Like, the pub we normally go down is burnt down now, unfortunately. They are rebuilding it to the cost of 6 million. It's right on the coast. It's a beautiful pub. But yeah, it got burnt down due to a tumble dryer catching on fire in the middle of the night, because people do sleep above the pub. Some of the staff there. It's a beautiful seaside pub. And yeah, that depressed me somewhat. But anyway, that's as an aside. Welcome, Adam. Good to have you here. So
there was a question I want to answer because it relates to the topic. Is in my chat, and you may have missed it, but it was just random in there from Hooves. And the question is, how big is the river after the dam explosion? So where we're talking about down in Kherson, it is still relatively full of water based on tidal flow backing up into there at Kherson, coming in from the Black Sea. So there is still a significant amount of water in the river there, but that's due to the Black Sea. Once you go above to the right of that map, and you don't have to go, Johnny, where Nova Kakhovka Dam was, between that and yeah, just going upriver from there all the way up to Zaporizhia, the river is very low. And even in Kherson, it's still much lower than it should be, but it's still a barrier. And once again, assisted by the tides of the Black Sea. But above the Nova Kakhovka Dam, between there and Zaporizhia, and that dam is called the Dnipro hydroelectric dam, and it is massive. That is gone. Very little water there. That is some of the images you have seen where the river has been turned into new forest and the
So
ecology has
what's
changed.
yeah, what's interesting here is that that Google Earth has updated the imagery. Certainly, when you zoomed out, so you can see this used to be like dark blue, like that color.
All of that was that
So
whole big
that
area.
whole big area was that
Yes,
dark
sir.
blue, and indeed, when I zoom in, it's sometimes so it changes. So that's what it used to look like when you
Yes.
zoom in. For some, I don't know why they render it in this way. So that's what it used to be. This whole area was, and if you remember, back in November 2022, the Ukrainians tried to attack Enerhodar. This is the nuclear power plant here. There's a cooling pools there. They tried to attack from across the river over here using boats, and they
Mhm.
pretty much got close enough. I think they might have, did they land a boat? Anyway, it got repelled because they found out there were quite a lot of armaments and mechanized equipment and all sorts of stuff. That's a lot of stuff's being stored in an Hadar because it's
And just
safeguarded from being struck.
just remember, in Nergodar, that is the place of the Zaporizhia nuclear power
Yeah,
plant. In fact, to Johnny's left there is that rectangle. That's the huge
that's a
cooling
cooling
pond.
plant. Yeah.
Yes.
So
But all of that area that you see blue there is relatively grown in, and it's very sad. The water then turns upriver there, goes to
there it is.
Zaporizhia. Yep, that right there. It goes to Zaporizhia, and between Zaporizhia and then north of that, all the way to Kiev, the river is at normal level because of the dam there in Zaporizhia. So
Yeah.
Zaporizhia Dam has been struck multiple times. In fact, the latest one a few months ago, they were very close to getting it. And I know you hear the news. Well, that the energy infrastructure in Zaporizhia Dam there, and the Dnipro Dam is completely protected. They couldn't bust that. Okay, that may be so, but I'm here as a firsthand witness with Jania and others. There were 3 missile strikes that hit within 100 meters of each other. And if one more missile had been able to strike the dam in that location, they destroyed the dam enough to get it down to water level, and it's
Mm,
still being repaired for the highway infrastructure that goes across it. If one
mm.
more missile had hit, we would have had another water issue with a massive amount of water coming out and flowing down into now that dry area. And you're talking about an ecological disaster that would make Nova Kakhovka look very small.
Yeah. So yeah, goodness me, and they talked about this in terms of there are a number of these going back and back dams and whatnot. The one of the theories is that the biggest threat would be the dams up near Kiev because it's all like they're all connected to each other. It's like a
Yes.
dominoes almost. So if they were worried that the dams near Kiev were going to be targeted and that would cause huge issues, and I don't know whether that's still something that they are worried about. But obviously, the air defenses around there will be slightly better than they are further down in, say, Zaporizhia and whatnot.
It's so that Dnipro River dam system is an interconnected system.
Yeah,
And there
yeah,
are multiple dams, the largest being though in Zaporizhia at the
yeah.
basin. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rosalind Miller, for donating. Thank you for Da Vinci, who's donated, I think, both to this and to yours, Greg. So thank you. Kevin Forst, another one there. That's really great of you. And all you absolute legends. Let's just have a little look at, in fact, I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to just go through the a bit of the wall, donors wall here on the page for the NAFO donations, the actual NAFO website here. Kevin Forst, Marion, massive respect to you, JP, and the heroes. The Dutch fan has so much respect for you, Jonathan. Keep up the good work. Sit back and have a cup of tea. This time we'll do the work. That's amazing. Thanks, mate. Mike Stibe, glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes. Our thoughts with the Ukraine tyranny can't be allowed to win. Exactly. Thank you, Craig Smith. Chris Jones, for the heroes fighting for Ukraine's freedom and from Russian tyranny. MJ Stelmach Honor. I am a health professional, says someone else. If I am to have a Ukrainian patch, can it be from the people who put soldiers together rather than those who take them apart? Thanks. Interesting. James, anonymous. James Leacock, glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes. Putin will die or face a criminal court. Michael Winkler, incredibly generous. He's such a strong supporter of both this channel and the NAFO campaign in honor of those who risk their lives for Western freedom. And that's the point. This isn't just about, you could argue there's a bit of self-interest here in that we are supporting Ukraine because it's in our best interest, but it's also morally the correct thing to do. And it's also strategically the correct thing to do. They are fighting for us. Absolutely. Rob, Stephen, Spencer Cousins, Melissa, and I'm going to read this one out. Thank you, JP, for your truth, dedication to the cause, and unwavering support to Ukraine. We're all infinitely more knowledgeable and informed because of you. That's not why I'm reading that out. It's the first bit. Together to victory. With respect and gratitude, Keith and Melissa Kane. Thank you, Keith. Keith is just a great supporter. He's on your channel as well, I think. Now, the patch, the 42nd Epistemology Battalion. Actually, Chris Jones, who we just heard from, is the guy who designed this patch. He does an awful lot of work for Zaluzhny. He's a guy that's behind all of these graphs that you see on the Zaluzhny websites and whatnot. So he helps them out. He's an absolute legend. This patch, it has a bit of meaning. So epistemology is a study of knowledge and truth. That's why JR was heavily involved in the design of this. So thanks, JR, as well. He's behind the scenes today taking questions. 42nd, 42 is Meaning of Life as according to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, written by Douglas Adams. Reese represent, what is it? Devotion and endurance. I'll have to look up the symbology of Reese. You've got the globe for sort of global geopolitics. You've got the sort of NATO star compass. We've got Burke here. You like this, Greg, but that's the rod of Asclepius there is there for Pete, the medic, and for his sort of dedication to the cause. So that's what's in the book. Book is knowledge, ATP geopolitics. So there's meaning in this. It's not just like random. This has all been put together precisely because it has that meaning. So yeah, I just thought it'd be nice to understand that. Symbolism of a wreath is eternal life commemoration. This is the kind of meaning they can have. Hope, peace, and love as well. They can mean lots of different things. But yeah, there you go. So wreaths can be understood in many different ways. Richard Powell, Ivo, Lee Renz, Pronoy Mandel, Nicholas Valkenhaus, Mary, all of these people. Thank you. Simon Hines, Andreas Lichters, Anthony Turner, John P, always a legend. Deborah Borlays, King Raccoon, Michael Shiozaki, Ramey, Peter Maddox, Stein, Jeff Tyler, Mike, William, Richard Demi, Warren, Mitch Mazarol, who's a total legend. Andres Viel Pando, lots of anonymouses, King Raccoon again, Chris, Niels Christian Clement, John Davis, sorry, just a few more. Kathy Summer, Serhii Liashka, Adrian, Austin, incredibly generous there. Thank you, Austin and Christina. So really appreciate all of those people. I just thought I'd take the time to say thank you. And yeah, good stuff. So on to Greg. What your thoughts about what's going on at the moment in terms of the indeed JR concept art by you? Yeah, Chris put the design together, but it was on your ideas and everything. So JR has. If it wasn't for JR, by the way, this campaign wouldn't be happening. He is the one that has driven this. Chris has really helped, Chris Jones, and also I'd say Rick the Ukrainian has been absolutely instrumental behind the scenes in pulling advice from, and etc. So thank you to all of those people. And by the way, my donation that I'll be doubling the biggest donation for today is in the name of JR. So that is my payment to JR for all his help with my mapping and everything will be going into this. So thank you. That's like that's JR's donation. It's not my donation. So in terms of the war in Ukraine at the moment, Greg, as I was going to say, what are your general feelings about how it's going? I'm always up and down, and it's funny. Like my views, I'm up and down with aid, not aid, death, not huge losses, pretty good places on the map that have been lost, stopping the losses, places being lost, up and down. But then when I take a look back, Greg, I get a sense that I'm actually where I was about a year and a half ago, which is that I still have broadly the same opinions of where we're at and where it's going. Although the Russians have taken more land, it's still the same problems, but still the same outlook. The only difference might be China and North Korea being involved. Anyway, your thoughts?
Well, so my logical question to you would be, if they've taken more land, how can your outlook be the same? If we've lost more soldiers and we're still struggling to mobilize, and they're having internal arguments now, spearheaded by the United States, trying to encourage Ukraine to lower their mobilization age even further, how can it be the same? For me, it can't be the same, because I, first of all, do not believe the world outside of Ukraine understands Ukrainian mobilization. You cannot read mobilization on a headline on CNN or the Telegraph or Sky News or Times and understand Ukrainian mobilization. The world rejoices when we hear Ukraine has an app. Ukraine is mobilizing more. More guys are coming. They're grabbing less guys off the road, and they're doing it in the proper way now. They have to be notified by the mail, by the postal system. The reality is, only 1 out of 25 mobilized persons gets to the zero line. That statistic came out last night. And it's not that I want to get people to the zero lines. It's just that the pool and the ability to train these new recruits is a much more difficult process than the rest of the world understands. We just hear, okay, we're having success in mobilization. Okay, but what does that mean? What that means is you're getting some guys, you're getting the training, but are you getting them actively involved in the battle? Secondly, are you getting the mobilized guys to their points of expertise? For example, if you're mobilizing IT guys, get them in the drone battalions. If you're mobilizing this person who has this skill, well, it's a mechanic, we'll get them into the mechanic division. All of these things, and it is better, but you are the one that mentioned China and North Korea, and we can add Iran in that. And Russia has no problem right now sharing with the world that we have an open relationship. They're even doing their best to make it legally by ratifying it there in the Duma, with paragraph 4 of that stating that both countries, Russia and North Korea, having the right and the responsibility to defend each other upon attack. With military partnership, military agreements. We see what China is doing, all of that. So for me, I want to be positive, and for the most part, I am, because we're still here. And the amount of land taken, comparatively speaking, to the advantage they have is minimal. I think that's a fair way to say it. But right now, we're losing some very key ground. We are losing the high ground above Kakhovka, and that will just increase. I mean, they're getting much, much closer in Ostrivsky, but this allows them further access, not only for Kakhovka down in the southeastern corner of the front line, but there is also a key place that you guys will begin to hear about, and it's Kakhovka. So yeah, going down there, and you see Ostrivsky coming in right there, that jaunt up there in the middle of your screen to the right, where the red comes into the water, to the right of that.
That's correct. That's Kakhovka there.
No, on the red, the Ostrivsky.
Yeah.
Right there. That has been a recent stabilization for them. That allows them access for further shelling, of course, into Kakhovka, which is a stronghold, but there's Kakhovka. You'll continue to hear more about that place. It's a very important place that Ukraine it's a stronghold for Ukraine. They're doing a good job, but you can see there with that encirclement.
Yeah, it's not as, you know, that's kind of doomed, you would have thought, going forward.
Ukraine's holding it, but Russia wants it.
Yeah.
So Toretsk, Chasiv Yar, they've come across the bridge, the canal there on the south side. You know, that gets them a little bit closer. That's paved highway. One of the things that I've been pushing, Johnny, and I encourage you this year as we go into the fall and winter, when you are doing your map analysis. By the way, guys, if you want some of the best map analysis on the planet, you need to be watching Johnny at ATP Geopolitics. And the reason I say that is he's been there. So when he's looking at these maps, he has a completely different understanding, knowing in the back of his head what the terrain looks like, what it feels like, how he can explain it and describe it to you. But Johnny, I would just encourage you as you do your map updates, and this winter we'll do some together. Paved roads will be king this winter. Paved roads will be king. Ukraine is already talking about it. And I was watching some Russian news about a week ago and reported it on my channel. They're talking about it. Paved roads this winter will be king. One of the key places that I'm concerned about is actually the river road between Kupyansk and Borova. Zhenya and I were just in Borova. You know, right there, brother. We now begin to see that encirclement to the north of that for Kupyansk, which Russia, that's Borova right there. There's the road. There's 2 bridge accesses across. That bridge is destroyed where his hand is. That's already gone. Access there is only on pontoon bridge that rotates, and you can only cross it at certain times. And Jane and we were just there in Borova. I can tell you that Borova weeks ago was 75% destroyed. And I know that number is much higher now because we talked to the guys in Borova. I can't call their unit number. That would be unfair. But I can tell you that red pushing in there, splitting Borova and Kupyansk to the north, where the red is coming in there to the river. There's
Shani area.
Yeah, thank you. There's a key bridge crossing there, and that bridge is destroyed as well. And once you cross the river here, if you zoom out just a little bit, Johnny, yeah, a little bit more. Okay, so and put that bridge, put that river place right in the middle of the screen. Just come down a little bit. Thank you. So you see the half semicircle there. That is it looks like the old Bakhmut half circle or the Avdiivka half circle. Well, this time it's Kupyansk. That is the prize. I will tell you, Ukraine is doing a good job holding there, but the amount of artillery coming in and drones and glide bombs is very, very significant. But Ukraine holding well, important town. That is a town that Russia took early. Ukraine retook in their counteroffensive and is holding it very well. The issue that you need to pay attention to here is, especially going into winter, this line will not move much, if at all. The reason being, the river is a barrier. The terrain is a barrier. It's very undulated terrain. And then if you see the road system there and you're going around it right now, come down and then go up and go left. It's a big square right there in the middle. See that open area square? You're in it. Your hand's in it right now.
You're breaking up for me, so I can't really hear.
That open area right there to your left.
The internet seems to be breaking up. All right.
All of people, you see the road there, all of that area right there. And yes, all of that. It's completely rural, up and down terrain. No army is going to move through that. So I don't see, and this is good for Ukraine. This is good news. I don't see this changing much unless something crazy happened beyond normal warfare there. So that's good.
My theory has been that although it's not ideal, Russia can realistically take all the way up to the Oskil River, and it's not great. But if you're going to give anywhere away, A, the Russians had this previously, and B, you've got the natural river barrier there. So essentially, this is like a buffer zone that Ukraine can hold on to for as long as possible. But it's not the end of the world if the Russians take that. Whereas, when you're looking at other places, say Chasiv Yar, actually, if you don't have that sort of scenario here, and if the Russians are not fighting here, then they're knocking on Konstantinivka, Druzhkivka, Kramatorsk, and Slavyansk door, and then that's much. Over here, I think there is some there's some give that Ukraine can afford to lose in terms of territory, and it's massively important.
You are.
It's also worth noting that up in Kupyansk as well.
You're preaching to the choir.
Hello.
Yeah, you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. So Kupyansk is on. Yeah, I do now. Yeah, Kupyansk is on higher ground here generally as well. So Ukraine have some advantage sort of locally around here to be able. If we see to the bottom right hand side of the map, you should have a height there. So you've got where is the high ground? So that's 150, and then over here, yeah, 90, 120,
let me explain
110.
That. Let me just explain that for folks.
Yeah, this is higher ground.
Let me explain that for folks and make it very easy. On the right side of the river, where the red is, we are suggesting that even if Russia was to take down to the river, of course we don't want that, but it could be beneficial for Ukraine. But let me just explain it to you in layman terms so that we can picture it in our mind. If you go down to the river from where the Russians are holding and you come down to the river, you can cross the river. Imagine yourself standing in the city looking at a 6, 7, or 8 story tall building. 9, 10. Walk up to the base of that building and look straight up. That is what you have to deal with in a majority of that river crossing. Once you cross the river is like in a gully there. It's in a deep ravine in most of the places. And when you come across it, you then have to make way. And a lot of the ways the roads cross that river, they do a lot of switchback because it's just a steep climb, and it's a natural barrier to be very difficult to cross. So you can see it right there. It's right there. Yeah. It's like an 8, 9, 10. I know it don't look like it, but trust me, it is. It's like an 8, 9, or 10 story building, and it's forested and rocky. It's almost like mountainous. There, you're seeing it good there.
Yeah, so that I'm not too worried about here so much as like we've been talking about Kakhovka and Pokrovsk and Chasiv Yar. Those I think have much more seriousness in terms of what the Russians can do. But like when I zoom out to get the macro sense, I still think Russia, second greatest army in the world. They've really achieved relatively little, even though this has been a bad 6 months for Ukraine in terms of losing territory compared to previous times. Still, relatively speaking, the Russians, like their net gains, especially if you take Kursk into account, have been really underwhelming for the army that was seeking to take the entirety of Ukraine, really. And then it's these long-term prognoses. Now, the only worry I have for Ukraine, like the major worry, is obviously US elections November, but it's China. It's how much help China are going to give to Russia, and I think that is a key. I said right at the beginning of this war, the only way that Russia can prevail in this war, the only way they can get anywhere near their maximalist intentions. Where I think now maximalist intentions would be at the most taking up to the Dnipro River, but that's not going to happen. So the only way I think they can do that is if China just pile in with all their provisions of lethal weapons. But then if China do that, then the rest of the world will.
You have World War III.
Yeah.
I don't think, Johnny. Let's be fair in our analysis. I don't think. I mean, I know that you are deeply spiritual. You have a one-line red phone hotline directly to the throne of God.
I like to drink.
By the way,
spirits.
guys, after this stream, Johnny has a few errands to run, but he will be back tonight, 8 p.m. UK time, answering your calls about prayer and giving you personal prophecy. Make sure you don't miss it. Scratch that. Okay, now back to the thing at hand here. People in my chat are going, I love these two guys working together. I so enjoy it. Well, thank you for that. That's been posted a lot, commented a lot. Thank you. We're buddies. And Johnny, would it be fair to say at the beginning of this war that none of us would have expected the relationships that we are beginning to see unfold between China and Russia? It's not went away. If anything, it's growing. Secondly, would you have predicted the open relationship now that is growing between Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin, North Korea and Russia to this level? Probably not.
No, and so a couple of points of note is right now there is a BRICS meeting: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and that's happening in Kherson in Russia. There are 33 nations there, I believe, which is incredibly problematic. I know people laugh at BRICS because it's supposed to be this alternative to the international currency of the dollar. It's supposed to, present this alternative hegemony, this kind of power unit to the US hegemony, along with the West. And though it might not be challenging it right now, if you're having 33 countries turn up to that and you've got a waiting list of people wanting to join, and Turkey have shown interest, and Turkey are in NATO and had wanted to accede to the EU, you've got a problem. Like, this is going forward. We are seeing the world coalesce into broadly two sides at the moment. It's coming somewhat binary. The question is, where's the global south going to be going? Well, actually, some of them appear to be a bit anti-American. And you can talk about why that might be. Was it due to decades of American pseudo-imperialism? And we can wonder about whether foreign policy in the past for the US has been like good for the US in the immediacy, but right now could be biting them on the arse. But in terms of America's foreign policy right now, the correct thing by supporting Ukraine, okay, are they doing enough? We can have that discussion, but they are behind Ukraine, and that is morally and strategically the right thing to do. Whereas we might not necessarily agree with that in terms of, say, Iraq or other things in the past, right? So I think there's a lot more moral clarity here, there's more political clarity with the support of Ukraine. But we've got the world is at this time where they're sort of picking sides, and this is an inflection point in history, and it's incredibly serious. And when North Korea comes out and overtly supports Russia, and the UN's and Antonio Guterres is wanting to go and shake Putin's hand, I'm thinking, holy crap, we've got a bit of a problem here. And I just hope that the EU holds strong. I hope that the UK holds strong. I hope that Australia, New Zealand, South Korea and Japan hold strong. That there is this, the West, or whatever you want to call it, is able to remain really committed to Ukraine. There are cracks in the EU due to the influence of Russia and the disinformation campaigns, but we've just seen Moldova make the right decision. If Georgia can make the right decision on the 26th of October when they have their elections, that will be a kick in the shins for Putin. So there's hope, but there's also a great deal of worry.
We still, at the same time, seeing Hungary, Slovakia, and Serbia playing their games on the fence at the highest levels, with presidents and prime ministers talking about economics, talking about our relationship with Russia will continue. It was just Slovakia coming out and said, we will not, or Serbia, no more sanctions. So you're seeing this game being played on multiple nations. And I think, honestly, JP, I think right now, for me, I don't listen to any of it. None of it. I report it. I talk about it because it's what some of these guys are talking about. But until November the 5th happens.
Yeah. We need to work out what's going on with the US, of course, first. But actually, just on what you were saying, so Serbia is an interesting one because they have not gone to the BRICS summit. So that's interesting because they do a lot of talking out of both sides of their mouth. They are part of the Belt and Road Initiative of China. So China's involved in Serbia and Hungary, and so there is a compromise that's interesting. Slovakia's Robert Fico has just recently denied the Butcher massacre, which is like, what are you doing, you absolute muppet?
Not only that, he said if he stays in power, that his relationship priority will be that economic partnership with Russia if the war ends by 2027. We know what Orban does, and I'm not trying to interrupt you. I just want.
It's absolutely right.
We need a very strong coalition to fight against the coalition that is being developed in front of our eyes openly between Russia, North Korea, China, and we can throw Iran in there. So and they're so bold about it. I just wish we had some of that boldness on our side, saying, you know what? No, enough's enough.
So I think what you are seeing, like I've said, is picking sides, but it's not. You're absolutely right. It's about coalescing and being unified in our support of Ukraine, or it's in support of our common values. But also, there's going to be all these attempts to undermine unity in the other side, in the same way that Russia are trying to do that with the EU, with the US political system, etc., etc. Actually, I wonder what's going on with Lula da Silva, the Brazilian president, who is at present not going to BRICS. Now, he supposedly slipped in his bath and knocked his head. Now, is that what happened? I don't know. Or is that an excuse not to go to BRICS? Because actually, he doesn't like Putin, but also he doesn't like the US. So Lula da Silva is an interesting character. And I wanted him to be in charge more than Bolsonaro, because I despise Bolsonaro, and I like da Silva because of his environmental credentials and wanting to do better things for like the rainforest in Brazil. But actually, which is why I think there's this pushback in not supporting Ukraine so overtly. But at the same time, he's pushing back against Putin, whereas Bolsonaro was a mate of Putin's. Lula da Silva is not. So there's a really interesting dynamic there. And it's about, like, can we use that to our advantage to drive a wedge between Brazil and the rest of BRICS to draw them away? You know, you can bet your bottom dollar that there's going to be so much international diplomacy going on that we are just not aware about. You know, there will be people acting in South Africa to try and pull South Africa away from BRICS, no doubt. There'll be things going on. We've seen the Sahel region of Africa where Russia have gone in, and there have been 7 coups in the last couple of years. There's uranium there, there's gold there, there's diamonds. You know, Russia are making money out of that region,
and China.
Back in, yeah,
they're partnering on the African continent. They are partners.
And so there's this war. When I say we're in a world war, this is because there is war taking place in ways that people, your average Joe out there, is not aware of. There is what, like, Ukrainian soldiers special forces soldiers are working in Sudan, right? What the frick are they doing in Sudan? Well, actually, Russia is operating there and generating money out of these places. So Ukraine want to stop them generating money. So their special forces are they're helping out the Tuareg rebels in Mali, and they're helping out the Sudanese forces here to attack, you know, Wagner there. This war is a war that has a much greater geographical scope than people at first realize.
War is fought with more than bullets. And I know now we're in modern warfare with drones and EW and technology and social media and all of this, but let's just leave all of those practical things we look at it as regard specifically, like here in the Ukraine war. And we could sit here and list back and forth and okay, well, this weapon's being used, this weapon's being used, this weapon's being used. That's not what I'm talking about. Right now, there is a global war going on, and it is not only with boots and bullets, but it is with pre-positioning of what is going to be in what's coming now, this post-Russo-Ukrainian war, because this is going to, however and whenever it ends, the world will look differently, and depending upon how it ends is how the world's going to look. What I'm trying to say is, this world right now is drawing sides. They really are, and we're seeing a split division, and it's not just on a military side, but it's on ideologies. It's on, you called it yourself, friendships and partnerships, common objectives, common hatred, common likes. And we're seeing that, you know, it was Khrushchev in 1959 who said, "We will take America down without ever firing a bullet." And here we are in 2024, and that has not happened. But we do see right now, for the next couple of weeks, the world sitting on pins and needles, waiting to see what the United States is going to do. And that is going to have a massive impact upon not only the war in Ukraine, but upon a lot of nations right now that I think are just waiting to see what direction is the United States going, which direction is the United States going to go? Who is going to win the presidency? And personally, as an American right now, and I know there are a lot of Americans that watch your channel and watch mine. Nobody knows. Excuse me. Nobody knows. Forget the polls. Forget everything.
Yeah, I think the
knows.
polls are definitely not reflecting what we're seeing on the ground, both in terms of early voting and enthusiasm. Now, does enthusiasm turn into votes? I don't know, but I think it's going to be interesting to see what the results really are and to see whether they're going to be way away from the polls or whether the polls are indeed correct. I don't know, but yeah, it's hugely important, and it beggars belief that I don't want to get too much into long weeds of American politics. I do spend an awful lot of time talking about it, but the man with the moral fiber and the stuff that he's saying, still getting 46-47% of the vote, it just blows my mind. Like, it just absolutely blows my mind.
I need to explain that to you. Let me explain that to you. Take off your analytical cap. Okay. The United States is split right down the middle. And it's just a fact. It is split right down the middle. There is 50, and I call the 50. You can call 49-51, 48-52. Regardless, let's just call it 50-50 for our conversation. It's split down the middle. And what's going to happen, I'm not an expert on this, but what's going to happen, what's going to sway this one way or the other, as I can tell you here as an American in Western Pennsylvania, we get our local TV actually in from Ohio, from the Youngstown television market, the Pittsburgh market, and both of those. So one's in Pennsylvania and one's in Ohio. And Johnny, like my mother-in-law, watches Family Feud every night. Okay. It's what grandmas do. And every commercial is political. Everyone. And she sits there, looks at the TV and goes, my God, I'm so sick of this. I'm so sick of this. I'm ready for this election to be over. This is so stupid. Why do we got to hear this 24/7, 24/7? People will make their decision in the box. Leave us alone. Okay. But that attitude, it really is overwhelming how much, and the other Americans in here, I don't know where you live, but it's overwhelming this time, so much more.
Pennsylvania is the central place, though. It's literally whoever wins Pennsylvania wins the election pretty much. Like, if Harris wins Pennsylvania, then there's a less...
It's definitely a key state. It's looking like that. I will say this.
There are other options, but yeah.
There are, but I will say this. 50-50 in general. But I just believe that people are going to go into that booth, and when they have that ballot, they're going to look at it. And many people who have voted red in the past are going to go, I just can't do it. Their grandpa's going to have said, make sure you vote red. And they're going to go into the booth and they're going to look at that ballot and they're going to go, I just can't do it. I really believe there's going to be a lot of decisions made in the booth.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Greg. Like, so the one thing that gives me hope, and I know that I'd be a Democrat anyway, but I think this is for me, it's gone beyond that. This is a threat to democracy. This is I just think Trump is that dangerous. But what I have seen an awful lot of is Republicans publicly admitting that they are going to vote Democrat for the first time ever, blah, blah, blah. So we had Kamala Harris with 100 Republican lawmakers on stage the other day. We've had Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, blah, 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 from like hardcore to like even people, the mayor of Mesa, Jeff Duncan from Arizona, all of these Republicans coming out and very publicly saying, I am not going to vote for Donald Trump. And what we haven't seen is Democrats doing that publicly, right? There's just the movement is one way in these famous people, right? But that it would be weird if that was happening with famous people, but not with average Joes on the ground. So therefore, I do believe that there is, and polls suggest that there is a 9% leakage in some areas of Republicans to Democrats and only a 3% leakage from Democrats to non-Democrats. So that's my belief, is kind of what you're saying, which is when it comes down to it, there will be people that go to into the ballot box and say, put a vote in the ballot box, which would suggest a change of what they otherwise would have done. And that's what I'm hoping for.
And just to reiterate, the headlines here in the United States, and yes, this is completely centered around, and guys, one of the purposes to be here was to push Johnny's NAFO truck that is expanded and now went to 2 trucks. The links are in the description. He'll give an update. Yes, I know we're in sync. We're in complete sync, as because we are being led by the Holy Spirit, Johnny. You're being led by the Holy Spirit right now. You don't even know it. The Spirit of God is all over you, Johnny.
Really not, but
we're having fun. So we're here to support. We're here to support this NAFO. We're here to
dude. If it makes you happy to believe that, then you go for it.
We're here to give you guys an update on the war and to talk about some things geopolitically, and of course, we're winding it down talking about the American election. The reality is, Johnny, if you turn the headlines on here, you know, one day, you know, you have the Taylor Swift bump, and then you have, like you said, many prominent people from the Republican Party, even down to the commercials rolling around now, Mike Pence saying, I cannot vote for Donald Trump. And then you have many high-ranking military officials like a Mark Milley saying, "Oh, I can't vote for Donald Trump. He's too dangerous." John Bolton, he's too dangerous.
General Mattis, also
General Mattis. We see all of that, and they're pushing it, Johnny, every day on the television. But at the same time, on the other side, because I want everybody to understand and be fair, the big push right now against Kamala Harris is the African American vote, and it is a big focus right now from the Trump campaign. We're seeing a lot of articles. We're seeing a lot of interviews coming out about African-American males. And so you see each side right now with 2 weeks to go trying to push, and we are exactly 2 weeks to go from this day, trying to push their narrative. And the reason I believe we're seeing such concerted efforts with very unique attack platforms this time. Very unique, the way they're going at each other. You got Donald Trump serving French fries yesterday. That is a direct statement against something Kamala said. That's what that all was about. Why are they doing that? Because the election's that close.
Yeah.
And I think both camps know it. Forget the polls that say 60-40. Oh, now it's 54-44. It was 44-54. Forget all that mess. When it comes down to it, there are going to be a lot of reds that vote blue, and there will be some former blues that vote red. Who's going to get the most of that transition vote, in my opinion, is who wins the election.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And there are some other interesting shifts. So you're talking about, it's really interesting, without wanting to get too much more into long weeds of this, there is, as you mentioned, the electorate is homogenizing a bit more outside of the white electorate. I'm going to talk about white soon. But in terms of Black and Latino voters, it's been traditional that they voted more for Democrats due to civil rights movement and due to immigration and being more aligned with Democrats who are more aligned for supporting. But actually, when you start getting to second, third generation, say second, third generation Catholic from, you know, South America, actually, if they are still quite strongly religious, they're going to have more affinity with the Republicans. And so what you start getting is a shift of, we're starting to see a homogenization of the non-white vote, where actually it's not huge, but you are seeing this movement of some, particularly Black men, not so much Black women, but Black men back going to the Republicans. But what's interesting is that is a larger percent of a smaller amount than the college educated white vote that is going harder for Democrats. So you've got this really interesting realignment in certain demographics where Trump is losing the educated white vote, but that may be a smaller percentage than losing the Black vote, non-educated, particularly non-college educated Black vote, male vote. But it's a smaller percentage of a much, much larger piece of the pie. And as a result, there are some people saying, well, the hope is that completely mitigates the loss of some Latino and Black voters. Anyway, you know, that's when you get into long ways of polling and crosstabs and all sorts. I want to go back to the fundraising, the NAFO truck, because this only updates, I think, once an hour as far as the number here, but we are now officially over one truck. So pat on the back, guys, round of applause. You have... That's what I'm talking about, Greg. That's what I'm talking about. That is one truck, brother. We have raised one truck. And by the way, some added people on here. I think we didn't have Kevin Forst, Marion, Kevin Forst, Richard Bennett, Rosalind Miller. Thank you. I said that from the thread. Linda, Brett Golding, and Tanya Rindenko. And by the way, Tanya Rindenko is also, so thank you, Tanya. That's amazing. And I hope the patch gets to you. Tanya Rindenko says, in honor of my father, can you help me out with the pronunciation of that? I presume the second word is Rindenko. Can you read that on the screen, Greg? That first name?
I sure can. I can read the first one too. Trohit Rydenko, born 1917 in Mykolaiv, died 1991 in Canada. Just bought a patch.
Total legend, Tanya. Thank you. Thank you. And here's to your father. Long may he live in the memories of those who knew him.
Johnny, may I interject? Just this is good news for you. On my channel, David Says donated 500 USD to our nonprofit during this stream. He did not indicate what that was for. I will now indicate it for him unless I get a private message later, which I don't believe. I'm sure it was meant for your NAFO campaign. So we will be making a $500 minimum donation towards your NAFO campaign, sir.
In that case, I will be making $1,000 donation to that campaign. So thank you very much, Greg. And
you're done. And you know, we do what we say we're going to do. So I'll get our office to send that over to your NAFO and give you a confirmation of it.
That's incredibly generous of you.
Yeah, thank David L. So thank you so much. And just before I, you get back to your waxing eloquent there in the Queen's perfect English, you did say, we had the woohoos, and then you said we raised the NAFO truck. So I'm thinking probably a good name for that truck, since it's been raised, is Lazarus. Lazarus was raised from the dead. And maybe we could call it just checking. Okay, never mind. Keep going, Johnny. Just keep going.
I'm trying to think of a secular raising story, and I can't. I've got nothing.
Well, the Titanic is still.
Yeah, that's it. No, not the Titanic. Right, Sorry. Goose Springsteen has a thank you, by the way, Goose, really kind. Has the construction of defenses improved in the last year? I've seen it said many supposedly well-built defenses in reality are flawed. My answer would be, and Greg will have more knowledge about this, my answer is probably that it's a mixed bag of nuts and depends where you are. So I think they're probably...
Go ahead and then I'll confirm your
I was just going to say there probably are some very good fortifications built in some places, and in other places there are what should be good fortifications but are actually built on the wrong side of the hill and built not so well, and then there are other places where they are just outright not very good. And I think you've probably got a right old mix there.
That is exactly right. I will not call it by regions. We heard 6 months ago the frustration in the Kharkiv region. That is why we had issues with Vovchansk. That was a fact. They were just not prepared properly. There are other locations where they have not been prepared properly, but there are, let's call it this way, 33% of the line, I'm going to be very, very close to accurate here. 33% of the line has not been prepared properly. 66% of the line has been prepared properly, especially over the last 6 months since kind of the Kharkiv debacle there on the northern side of their defense lines. Although in defense of Ukraine, guys, do you know how hard it is to build defense lines when you have drones nonstop over your head? It is not easy up there where you're very close trying to build defense lines. But I can tell you with a fact, the southern defense lines and even wrapping up in behind Kramatorsk, that very important fortress there, very good defense lines have been built. Very good. And especially down on the south, from Kherson all the way over towards just Kakhovka, that whole southern line, those military administrations down there, a really, really good job.
See, that's what I've heard. And
you've seen them.
Yeah. And I had heard this as well, not from you, but from separately, that Zaporizhia, I was speaking to someone recently, I can't remember who it was, who was like calling that into question, but I'd heard that these ones are particularly good, and that they were well funded. I think Zaporizhia as an oblast did a particularly good job, because I think originally, was it not the case that part of the problem is that there was this argument as to who pays for them, and central government or local people, contractors or military, and really that should have been sorted out early doors. And there's a criticism of, I guess, the hierarchy, up to really Zelensky there, but that needed to be sorted out. And as a result, you get this patchwork quilt of of a situation where some oblasts have done a really good job and others haven't, and that then leads to, unfortunately, the death of troops from poor and the loss of territory from poor fortification. So yeah.
And for those of you watching, all those places where Johnny's finger was going on the southern line there, that is where the defenses are built very, very well. Now, I will tell you the truth, as always, the solid defense line, for example, behind Orikov, and this is due a lot to geography, guys. It's 30 kilometers back. Ukraine is willing, if need be. We're not looking at that now, so don't be alarmed or anything. But they're not 5 kilometers back. The reason they are built so good in the south, and I'm talking about like 3 lines of dragon's teeth. Now trenches not dug with early in the war. I'm riding the front lines with Zhenya, and I'm literally watching guys out there with shovels digging lines, and the air alarm sirens are going off. Not now. We're talking about back lines built with heavy equipment, reinforced concrete, everything concreted, triple lines of dragon's teeth properly installed. That southern line right there, it's defended extremely well.
Yeah. And actually, so I've remembered who I was talking to. So I was interviewing Tim White, and he said he knew some people that were kind of saying that they weren't built very well around here. But he was talking about this attack to Levadny. So Levadny's here, which is right there, which is to so this is the Vuhledar, losing this whole area, and it all went a bit wrong here. And he was saying that look, they overrun here because defenses were poorly built. But my point was like, no, those aren't the proper defenses. The defenses, those would just be like your localized trenches that have been built pretty much by the troops as they're fighting there type thing. Like your proper defenses are like 30 kilometers back, because that's where you get your contractors in to build things properly, where they're out of range of FPV drones. You're not going to have decent trenches built near the contact line here. So these are going to be vulnerable. And if the Russians attack en masse in these places, they will get overrun. Like that shouldn't be a surprise to people. Like, I don't know if you remember, but like a week ago, people were like absolutely worrying that, Vuhledar was lost. And then Levadny, there was this move there, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, the Russians are making this breakthrough in Zaporizhia. And you're like, yeah, but no, that is going to be localized. And even as you say, there's an amount of land that you can not afford to lose here, but there's an awful lot of land before you get to the major fortifications, which will be a lot harder for the Russians to take. In principle,
you were spot on, and that's a lot of what we do and what I do. I just want to educate people. And so many times there's such an emotional response. Oh my, that defensive line is run over, and we're going to lose this next village. And Okay, probably, but that's not a defensive line. That is a temporary defensive position. What Johnny and I are specifically referring to now are, and I will call it, professionally built by contractors.
Yeah.
I can't tell you guys. Okay, I can tell you. Zhenya and I have been watching this being built for a year on the Southern Front, a year. And when it first started, Zhenya and I are riding through the Southern, heading to deliver some aid. And we look out in the field to our right, and Zhenya goes, look out there. And I'll look, and brother, it would look like a construction site on building a new high rise in downtown London. There was big trucks and cranes and bulldozers and excavators. I'm going, what in the heck is that? He goes, dude, they're building the defensive lines. And then you see these trucks come in with all these pre-made concrete walls.
Here you go, dude.
There.
Exactly what you're talking about.
Dude, there it is. I've watched that be built. I've watched it.
And this is Zaporizhia. So this is back March this year, but this would have been done before that. And this is a sort of trench lines that you can't build. Look at the extent of these.
I've been on those.
You can't build those on the contact line. These people aren't going to go to work. Oh yeah, I'm going to go. Yeah, I've got a contract to build a bunker like in the middle of a war zone. It's like you're not going to take that job. So these necessarily have to be built a long way behind the lines. And Zaporizhia, as far as I'm aware, had supposedly had the best sort of fortifications, and it may be that they're never tested. Let's hope that they're not, but they are there in the off chance that they are. But of course, the same goes the other way. So the Russians as the Ukrainians attacked down into, this is Robotna. The Russians had 3 lines of defenses, and the Ukrainians decided to attack in the place where it's strongest. And people like myself questioning whether this was at all the sensible thing for them to have done. It's like the Russians knew they were going to go to Tokmak, that is just to the south there, here. Like, I've got the fortifications here on my yellow lines. So these are the Brady Afric mapped lines. These are the fortifications where, you know, sometimes you've got 3 lines. So you've got tank ditch, then you've got 2 manned defense lines. So that you've got one whole one there, another one there, and then you've got the one around Tokmak, and then you've got kind of the first line up here. So it's ostensibly 4 whole sets of and that's where you decide to attack. It's just like that was, in my opinion, that was always going to end in a bit of a damp squib, and so it was. But yeah, you know, the problem is that the Russians have done a really good job of building their own defenses, and there's no doubt about that.
They have. But I will tell you, I saw the question in there, and I want to answer it. So you don't have to go grab it. I remember it. It was from Prepper H. Why is it that the South appears to have much better fortifications than, for example, the East, like Zaporizhia versus Donetsk or Zaporizhia versus Kharkiv? So there's multiplicity of reasons for that. Number one, the increase. Okay, let's just look at Zaporizhia City. Zaporizhia City was dead quiet. Literally a very random attack on Zaporizhia City, like prior to 6 weeks ago. Once you're off the 0 line there on the southern front, and I'm talking now from really Zaporizhia all the way over to Kakhovka, other than the battles right on that 0, and then within like a 5-kilometer range on either side of the 0, it was relatively quiet. And I know that's hard to hear, like in a war zone. It's relatively quiet. And they had the ability to do this under relative safety. Additionally, there are some regions that are better managed. I don't know what country you're watching from today, but I can tell you, I live in the United States. Some states are managed better than others. For example, like infrastructure, roads, and systems. You have a federal level and you have a state level. The same thing happens in Ukraine. For example, when I am running the roads in southern Ukraine, and I depart the Mykolaiv Oblast out in the middle of nowhere, and the sign's there, and I cross into the Kherson Oblast, there is an instant, obvious change in infrastructure because it's managed by the Kherson region or the Kherson Oblast. Kherson's infrastructure is, I can't throw out a real number, but I'm telling you, many, 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 many times better than the Mykolaiv regional management. It's just the way it is. Zaporizhia is managed 100 times better than the Donetsk Oblast. Okay, now Donetsk Oblast has been war-torn and
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Destruction for 10 years. So I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. That's why I made the first statement that Zaporizhia has pretty much been quiet up until about 6 weeks ago. And now we're seeing in Zaporizhia City, specifically, they're going to do to Zaporizhia what they're doing to Kharkiv. That's the plan. And due to that, we've been able to get some pretty good fortifications.
There, that's a good indication of, and I don't know when this was from, April this year. So that's, you know, some of the more wide scale fortifications. So you see quite a long way back from the front line.
Accurate. That is accurate.
Yeah. Yes, really, really good points there. So the other, what was the question again? Because I had an answer. What was that question that you had? So something else I wanted to add to it.
Well, it was why are the fortifications in the South appearing, for the most part, better than those in the East?
Oh, that was it. Sorry. Yes. So, and I'm sure you'll have an opinion to cast on this. The other reason might be because of the geography. So the simple fact of the matter, this might be a good map.
Very good.
Is that this is all rather flat land, and this is basically a big dust bowl. So the geography of the Zaporizhia region, this whole south, is very fertile farmland, and it's broadly quite flat. It's a bit of a dust bowl. In fact, it historically was a dust bowl until it was irrigated by the Dnipro River. As soon as it's irrigated, Yeah, it was basically literally a Dust Bowl desert. Now, this is a problem with the Kakhovka dam being taken out, is that actually irrigation is cut to all of this area. And that is a big challenge going forward. Will it turn back into a Dust Bowl? So on and so forth. These are the ecological impacts of war and of blowing up that dam. But what that also means is that it's probably likely that it's just physically much, much easier to build these fortifications, because if you look at stuff like that, you know, this is, there you go, you've got just a big flat sandy land that is easy to build. You can go and just zigzag right the way down there. You take that up to Kupyansk area where it's much more undulating hills, and you've probably got heavier mud and all sorts of stuff like that. That becomes you just can't go and do that so easily. So
not to mention rocks, forests.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yes, you got, yeah. So you've got woods, tree. What you have here are just vast amounts of massive fields with the occasional tree line. That's easy to bulldoze through. But up north and in Donetsk, it's just not so easy. So actually, one of the answers is probably physical geography has something to do with it as well. That just makes it easier to do in Zaporizhia.
So agree, Johnny. You know what? For that expert analysis.
Slava Ukraini.
Guys, I mean, even if he will not name the NAFO truck Lazarus, the man still has valid points on the construction of fortifications in southern Ukraine.
Absolutely. So Aussie Bugger here, testing me here with, I'm amazed JP thinks India or Brazil would or could sacrifice $1 or one life for BRICS. There is a Kremlin-backed, I'm not quite sure what the second sentence is, but however, I actually agree with you, Aussie Bugger. China and India, I don't know so much about Brazil, but probably Brazil to a degree, are transactional. They will do whatever they decide to do if they calculate it's in their best interest. I don't think people are committed to BRICS ideologically to the point where they would sacrifice themselves like in a war for BRICS. But war isn't just conventional. War is political, war is economic, war is trade, right? And so the hegemonic scenario of the world will take into account what people do in terms of OPEC plus. And if, you know, OPEC plus are going to, if Saudi Arabia is going to join BRICS, then suddenly you've got OPEC powers getting in bed with, you know, other massive natural resource powers. And then it becomes, India will be like, where can we get our stuff cheapest from? Well, if we're in bed with these guys, we can get our hydrocarbons cheaper. It's not an ideological thing about like putting down your life for these guys. It's about, I've got 1 billion people that live in my country. What's the cheapest way of feeding them? What's the cheapest way of giving them energy? That's all that India care about. That's all China cares about. China doesn't like Russia. Russia doesn't like China. Before this war started, the Russian generals were worried about, you know, where were most of the air defense units placed in Russia? They're along the Chinese border. Like the Russians were doing war games against the Chinese. The Russian generals have long worried to Putin that Russia could become a vassal state of China. Then they invaded Ukraine, and that's exactly what happened. So the Russians will be hurting here because they know they've given up their own agency and their own independence, if you like, but by becoming necessarily a vassal state of Russia. They're not aligned ideologically, Russia and China. BRICS is a marriage of convenience, whereby they're not very good bedfellows, but do you know what? They can do a good deal on hydrocarbons.
And in 2 weeks, the president of the United States will be elected. And at that point, a lot of these questions that Johnny is raising in these international relations between Russia, China, Russia and India, vassal states, necessity of hydrocarbons, energy, fuel, and food will be answered in 2 weeks.
It's all about 2 weeks. Right, I'm going to do a quick...
Listen, I made a little light of that, but the reality is, it's the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth. And there's 1 billion plus Indians. There's 1 billion plus Chinese. And you're right. They have to fuel and food. And the reality is that's a responsibility of the state, to provide the opportunity for their citizens to fuel and to food. And they're going to do what they need to do. I don't think any of these people or these nations like each other. The
No.
question is,
Yeah.
the question is, once the American election is over and we have Kamala Harris as president or Donald Trump as president, isn't it going to be interesting the first 2, 3, 4 weeks to see where these nations start to really align themselves? So for right now, I just think we're in a big question mark.
Yeah, so here's a question that you probably might give a different answer to me. So Goose Springsteen again, and thank you very much, Goose, for this gloomy question. But if Trump wins, to what extent is Biden culpable for not being a one-term president, as he first said? I think Kamala is a weaker candidate than someone who would likely emerge from a primary, e.g., Shapiro. Now, I actually disagree. I think Kamala Harris is actually stronger than people give her credit for. I've watched an absolute ton of her speeches. I have seen a lot of Kamala Harris. I've done a lot of videos, as you guys know, on the US politics, and I consume a vast amount of content. She is strong. I saw her with Liz Cheney I watched 2 whole kind of town hall things yesterday she did with Liz Cheney. And there is just the strength and competency there that people on the right take the mickey out of her, but they just haven't listened to her. They just actually, what they do is they take in things that have been said on Fox News unquestioningly, and actually she is stronger than people think. And I think she's been vice president. She's been around the world. She does the Munich security conferences. She knows what she's talking about internationally. And I would say she's definitely stronger than Biden. I think Biden has physically weakened. I think he is much more prone to anti-escalation in the vein of, say, Jake Sullivan. And I've said this before. Kamala Harris, if she wins, will have to differentiate herself from Joe Biden. So what does she do when she gets into a position of supporting Ukraine? She has 2 choices to differentiate herself from Biden. One is go in the Trump direction of appeasing Russia more, or the other one, she's only got 2, because she will do things differently. She said she'll do things differently. And Philip Gordon and people like Mark Kelly have said she'll do things differently. So she either goes in the appeasement direction or in a stronger support of Ukraine direction. She will not go in the appeasement direction. She has said that very openly. She has called Putin very overtly a murderous dictator. There's no way that she would go from calling him a murderous dictator to appeasement. So she will be stronger than Biden. How much stronger? I don't know. But she has to, any new leader, whether it's a football manager that comes in and takes over from the last person, you stamp your authority. You say, this is me and this is how I'm going to be different from the last guy. I talked about this with regard to Mark Rutte taking over Jens Stoltenberg. Mark Rutte, in Secretary General of NATO, has to decide which direction he goes in and how does he stamp his authority and how does he make his legacy. And he is going strong on support for Ukraine and doing a good job. I think Kamala Harris will do that because that's the only thing she can do. And she wants to, I think. But anyway, that's my tuppence. But Biden is, I think, culpable for not being strong enough in supporting Ukraine and being too scared of nuclear war. But that we can understand why you might be scared of that, because it's pretty serious.
So we can agree that Joe Biden could have done more. Is that a question? I'm asking you a question. So we agree that Joe Biden could have done more.
Yes, I think
okay. That's a good place to start from. In regard to my comment on your statement there, I will answer it. I now have videoed what you just said and recorded it.
Play it back to me in a month's time.
No, it's not. It's really not about that at all, to be honest with you. I don't think nobody can answer that, because I think time will tell. And for me, I hope what you said so eloquently is accurate. I really do.
Yeah, I do. Obviously.
I really, and I know that nobody consumes more media than you. I highly respect your analysis. You and I agree on much more than we disagree on. But I will tell you that time will tell. And I'm not sure. I personally believe that Russia is at this desperate pace right now with the introduction of North Korea, with the open talks with China, with to increase the pressure on whoever will become the new president of the United States. I'm just, as of right now, I'm being patient, and I'm hoping that what you said is accurate. I'm not sure the international experience nor the understanding of the Soviet mentality, the inner workings of the Kremlin. For me personally, I don't believe either candidate has the experience for that. Personally, either.
To move it from American politics, there is an interesting thing to note about, and I talked about this at length the other day in one of my videos. To be honest, I could mention any subject here and probably say I've talked about it at length somewhere, because all I do is talk at length about stuff all day, every day. But so talking about the Russian propensity to throw their human beings endlessly into this meat grinder and their equipment, and we think surely that's enough, surely you've had enough, surely. Zaluzhny admitted himself, as a former commander-in-chief for the Ukrainian armed forces, that a lot of people really liked him. I reserve judgment. I think the only way you can tell whether a person is a good military general, unless something really obvious happens, is after these things are over and history tells you, because we don't know what his decisions were like inside a bunker. We don't know exactly how much good information or bad information he had and what advice he was taking. What I can say is he admitted to two really quite big blunders, and one of them is somewhat understandable. So the first blunder, he said, is we would make 30 kilometers a day in the counteroffensive in Zaporizhia, and they made like 1 kilometer in a month or something. Do you know what I mean? Like fortifications, minefields, all that stuff. That was a really big misjudgment, and that was somewhat disastrous in terms of the counteroffensive. The other blunder he made, or the other miscalculation he made, that he admitted, was that he thought the Russians would have given up, having lost so many people. He was like, we expected them to capitulate, and they just didn't. And that is really, you should know by history that probably wouldn't have happened, by just looking at Second World War and previous Russian interactions. But that is the state of affairs with Russia. Is like, I keep going every day, oh my goodness, they've lost this many more again. Like, surely they've got to be close to culminating, and then they just scrape the barrel to get more humans and more pieces of kit from somewhere, and they are just able to keep going on. And they must be a case of throwing the kitchen, because you keep hearing anecdotes about how we are losing horrendous amounts of troops. The Russians saying this in Pokrovsk, you're seeing visual evidence of columns still getting largely destroyed, and thinking, this can't keep going on. The Russians must be desperate at the moment. But then, I said the same thing 6 months ago.
Well, that's all I was going to say. Not only you, but many, and rightfully so. It's not a dart. And every day I'm going, you guys don't understand the Kremlin. You guys don't understand. The people that they are sacrificing right now are not Western Russians. They are sacrificing Eastern Russians and ethnicities. They are sacrificing prisoners. They are sacrificing the riffraff of society. That is who they are running in. And everybody kept saying, oh, well, this can't go on. This can't go on. This can't go on. This can't go on. Guys, if, and this is a big if, and today we saw the North Korean flag planted at a certain location near Pokrovsk. Let me tell you, ignore that. But I will tell you this, that's irrelevant. I won't even waste my oxygen to talk about it other than this. That, whether it was AI, whether it's real, whether it was photoshopped, is irrelevant. It makes a statement. It makes a statement of solidarity, and now the world is seeing it.
Yeah.
So if, and a big if here, if North Korean troops start to come in decent numbers, you do realize it's basically free cannon fodder.
Yeah.
Because North Korea not only doesn't care about humanity, to them, economically, it may be a plus. that they have less mouths to feed.
Yeah, I was speaking to
And
Jake Bro about this, and he said that the North Koreans are unlikely to be able to go back because once they've seen what the Western world, even if it's Russia, in the crappy Russian sort of parts of where they're training and whatever, like those are people that you are not going to easily reintegrate back into a centrally
no, they're
planned North
sacrificial
Korean
lambs.
society.
They're
So
sacrificial
those
lambs.
are, yeah.
And that's, you know, and that's why we have to just be patient. But for sure, when people just begin to say it can't continue, it can't continue, it can't continue, while at the same time we're allowing economic relations to continue. Sanctions are not functioning at the level we had wished and desired. Even Western and American products are still making its way into Russia regularly through third-party nations like Armenia and like India. It's happening right in front of our eyes. Russia's still selling oil through their ghost fleets. They have economic relations with India and China. And people go, oh, that's nothing. That's nothing. It's nothing. We're still here. We're approaching 1,000 days of this war, going into the third year. Joe Biden will no longer be the president. In reality, over the last few months, there's been some, I think I've been reading into the chat, you know, some dropping of the balls. Now we're moving into this president election period. We hear different wranglings from different European leaders. We have a big ball of mess, but we cannot be naive. Cannot be naive. The Kremlin, KGB school, that Soviet school, look at it in World War II. They do not value human life the way you and I, as Westerners, value human life. They do not value human life the way Ukrainians value human life. So for them, it is not an apple to apple comparison. For them, it's completely different. And always keep that in the back of your mind when you're trying to do this analysis. It's not going to come down to just sheer numbers until there is no more resource for those numbers to continue to come in on the Russian side. Ukraine has a limited number of soldiers. We do not have, other than legions, international legions, foreign boots on the ground. We have some mercenaries who have taken contracts. We have a limited supply. We have Ukraine ramping up its own industrial production, its military production, and we have intermittent supply from the West. That's what we have. And for Ukraine to have held this strong for this long is a testimony to their
Incredible.
ability to fight and to be warriors using very little to stand against this just mass that comes against them. So if we can get through this election, get these guys supplied, get further coalitions, grow some backbones, put down some real direct statements against the East, and then back it up. And I mean, literally back it up. That at that point, we can start looking at numbers, but only at that point.
And actually, so I did my military aid update earlier, and there was an awful lot I forgot. I forgot half my links. They were in a different place, and I put them together. So tomorrow there'll be a bit of leftover from today. But I did forget to say one good thing, which is the UK is lending 2.26 billion pounds. So it's about 2.93 billion dollars. Through like underwriting with frozen Russian assets. That's going to be brilliant. We have seen today that the 35 billion euros from the EU has been approved in the EU. So there are serious amounts of money that will be going Ukraine's way at the right kind of time, which is really good news. And then we hear that the US is giving another $400 million package over the last 24 hours. And then Zelensky said an $800 million package for drones. So that's really good. So, you know, hopefully there are theories that if Harris gets in, that there'll be lots of packages going through to use up the appropriations bill that exists, and then there's hope that there'll be another appropriations bill on the back of that. So as Greg says, look, we'll see. I just want to point people towards the fundraising at the moment. Actually, it's a little bit higher than that. If we look here, someone pointed out, you can go to the bottom donor box. So 19,865 euros raised from 176 donations is amazing. I will be putting is it a pony? Is that what you call it in the UK? 1,000 into that, as doubling Greg's incredibly generous. So there will be one less bottle of wine for me this week. Yeah, because my
I've got-
bottles of wine cost £1,000.
I've got my notepad here and I've already written it down. I'll show it so everybody can see. David L, the donor, 500 to Johnny. So I'll send that to my office right after. It's sitting right here on my desk.
David L is a total legend.
Yes, thank you,
and so thank you very much for that incredible generosity, people. It really is superb. I'm just going to run through like thanks for like memberships and whatnot. Is that okay? And then we'll
absolutely, brother.
Wrap things up. So thanks to Kevin Forst who's donated as well very kindly. Thanks to the NAFO truck. Gifted 10 ATP memberships. Thank you, ATP Geopolitics. Thanks, Kevin. You're a total ledge. You know that. Johnny Negregard gifted an ATP Geopolitics membership. Thank you. Very kind of you. Donkor New for you has gifted 10 Greg Terry experience.
Thank you, Dunk.
Memberships. Total ledge. And we have Richard Bennett, 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thank you. All the other kind of super stickers, super thanks like Goose Springsteen, we've already said, we've already thanked. So I'm just going through mainly these ones. Tim Mommons gifting 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thanks, Tim. That's very kind of you. David L. There we go. What is the best link to donate to? So he's done
deal.
That. Done deal. Kevin Shaw has become a member. Thank you for doing that. We have Blonde Bombsheller has gifted 5 Greg Terry experience memberships. Thank you.
BB, great mod there. Thank you, BB.
Totally awesome. And then again, 5 Greg Terry experience memberships. So BB on the button there. So that's awesome. Thanks again, by the way, Tanya Rindenko. That's really, really kind of you. Michael Viewchart that says, good point, JP, on the shifts. Right, I presume we're talking about the shifts in terms of geopolitics. Remember the melting pot versus the mosaic. Nice work on the truck. Thank you, Michael, and thank you for your continued support. Really appreciate that. Blonde Bombshell again, 5 Greg Terry experience memberships. She's doing you a good turn there, that's for sure.
She is amazing supporter of Ukraine. Dude, it's indescribable, the work she does.
And Linda H there as well for some Greg Terry memberships as well. And then here's for Greg. He obviously, Linda again, $10.
Yeah, let me explain that to you, JP, really quickly, because I know we're closing out here. Zhenya was just in a rehab hospital. Soldiers were in there, and he did a little video with them. And they're chilly. We were buying them some new shirts. And on that live stream, people said, I want to buy them a sweater, and just started donating $10 for sweater fund. So we will be getting those wounded soldiers who are recovering, don't have the best heating systems in those recovery hospitals, some sweaters for the winter.
That's really good of you. Pete Watson here, obviously from Australia, saying, Slava Ukraini, long live the defenders, my brothers and sisters, God's avenging angels, reign, protect the humble, noble Ukrainian people. Thank you very much, Pete. That's very,
Johnny,
very
can we get an amen on that? Yeah. By the way, there has been a sighting of a Professor Gertis lurking, telling everybody to like the streams.
Oh, good old lurker. I would invite him on, but everyone's slower.
That's for Prof.
I thought this was interesting. So this is M. Mercia saying, my wife's from Moldova. So this is going back to the Moldovan very, very slim majority. It's now up to 51% of voting to accede to the EU. And Maya Sandu won the first round of the presidential voting to the tune of sort of 40-something%. So it then goes to a second round. It'll be her against a person who got 26%. He's a pro-Russian. She's likely to win that because she'll only need to pick up less than 10% from other third-party candidates. Likely to win that. But there's been lots of talk of exactly this. So your man here says, I presume, my wife's from Moldova. She knows people who had to take photos of their vote in the voting booth to get their bribe from the Russians. No sense of shame whatsoever from these people.
Let me speak to that. Let me speak to that because I've been working in Moldova since 2008. I've probably been to Kishinev 20 times and coming in and out of Ukraine. I will tell you this. That would not be surprising, and I can tell you that there is a lot of Russian influence inside Kishinev, even up to this day. And for the vote to be going the way it is going is a testimony to the Moldovan people.
There was a
It's
video.
tough there. It's
Yeah,
tough there.
yeah, absolutely. And there's here it is. Here, this is exactly it. So I'm going to show you this. So this is the sort of thing that is happening, pertinent to what you just said. So here's a video. This woman voted in Moldova's election on Sunday. They asked a surprise election monitor where she gets paid. So I decided to ask what she'd been promised. The authorities believe that Russia has been channeling in money to buy votes that Moscow has not let go of. So she here, just to give you a sense of what she actually said. So we go back to here. Will you tell me how much they were supposed to pay you? She asked this woman. They said 1,000 rubles, which is obviously not like a massive amount, but when you're trying to convince that many people to change their vote, then actually that all adds up. For voting rights, she says, yeah, who promised that? A man. He left. He said he'd be back, but he still hasn't come. Who did you vote for? I don't want to say. What did he say exactly? How were you meant to vote in the referendum? She's asked. They said they'd pay 500 rubles. Then there's a man said 1,000. And you came from Transnistria, which is the annexed region. Yes. Are there many of you who came here for the money? She asks. Me and her, and then another 3 people are meant to come, so on and so forth. You get the point. Really interesting interview there that goes into more detail, a little bit more detail. But that's the sort of thing that was happening. And as this is, you know, my wife knows about people who basically did similar sort of things. So the Russians have their fingerprints all over that elections. And what's really good news is that they didn't succeed. Like, they succeeded somewhat, of course they did, but it just got over the line for the EU accession, and that was the one that they were putting most of their effort behind to because I think they gave up on Maya Sandu. It would have been too much to shift that one, but the EU accession one was the important one.
I'll teach you one cultural lesson here. You ready for it? So even though you see the video saying rubles, so what they will say is "Я буду дам рублей." Okay, I will give you ruble. So it doesn't actually mean they're giving them Russian rubles. They're paying them in their own currency. It's even like in Ukraine 10 years ago. They wouldn't call it the grivna. I mean, even though it was just the term for cash. Paying cash. It's a slang term. Term. So what they're not, it's not like they're okay. Well, I'm gonna give you 1,000 rubles, and you go to the bank and change it to the Moldovan lei or go buy some dollars. So is it Russian influence? Absolutely, 100%. I'm just teaching you guys a cultural lesson here. Even up to 10 years ago in Ukraine, it was how many rubles you got? Even though you're talking about hryvnia or dollars, it's just cultural. So that shows you, though, the cultural influence. That's why I'm sharing this with you. The culture in Ukraine now, you don't hear the word ruble. Okay, rubles, ruble. In Moldova, absolutely. Everywhere you go, you'll hear that, and it's just colloquial language. Still, absolutely Russian influence, and of course, they're trying to buy their desired outcome there. No question.
Yeah. And finally, thank you, Myro, for some Swedish love there for your man Greg Terry and his efforts.
Thank you.
Just going to have a look at see if this is updated at all, because it only updates every once in a while. Nothing on there at the moment. We are up to, yes, we're over 20,000 euros. That's absolutely incredible. 20,003 euros. So do you know what? Thank you so much to everyone involved here. This is brilliant. I'm slightly worried that there's now another 18,000 rubles, 18,000 euros to go. So I hope we haven't bitten off more than we can chew, but we have definitely got we've definitely got the 12th NGU, another vehicle. We have I will share the video on tomorrow's one of my videos tomorrow. I probably won't be able to do another video today. But
darn it. Yes. Darn it, Johnny.
Sort yourself out. Where's your commitment?
I do want to say this. You know they exist. Very kind comment for you and I both on helping to explain different geopolitical situations. It's specifically about Moldova. So I just want to say to you know they exist. You're welcome. I try to be late to the party but accurate versus early to the party and wrong. And a lot of I have a lot of on the ground experience. I mean, I've been working in Kishinev since '08. I mean, so many times I know it like the back of my hand. I know Moldovan people. And then Johnny with his expertise in geopolitical things are like a match made in heaven, coming together. And then you throw in the sweater vest with Gertis, and you got the trifecta there. I will say this, Johnny, there is a
Go on.
beautiful glow on your dome today.
There
And
always is.
if I was there, I'd plant my lips right on that thing and give you a big old kiss.
It's a secular halo. I think you'll find it is. What that is it's from the light of reason. It's the light bulb of reason. That is actually, it's not coming from a light up there. That is inside my head, and it's so
coming
bright.
out.
My brain is so bright that it's actually going through my cranium and through the skin and out.
Well,
into the
you know,
atmosphere.
Johnny,
I know enlightenment for you.
I know you're enlightened, but I will tell you the Bible clearly talks about, so let your light shine before men that they will see your good works and testify about it. Johnny, that is the light of your good works burning out of your dome. Thank you.
Do you know what? I'll accept that. I will accept that. It may be a biblical quote, but it's apt. So
it's apt. Okay, we'll take it.
There are some interesting truths in there, generic truths that will extract from that.
I love you, buddy.
Just finally, Pete Watson, thanks. Pete says, see you in Ukraine, in my body, mind, soul, aloft in the skies of blue, walking fields of yellow, Lady Ukraine in my heart, hands of work, sword, shield ready. JPGT, God bless you. Thank you very much for your kind words and for your generous assistance there. And that's the sort of language that you man, Greg, that's Greg, that warms the cockles of his soul.
Well,
I mean, I don't believe in his soul, but he does. But it warms the cockles of his soul.
The bottom line is, with our bantering back and forth, having a little fun, we love each other and we stand together and we partner together, and 90% of stuff we actually agree on. So hopefully that's an example for folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, well said. Well said. Look, thank you, my man, and thank you. More importantly, oops, I don't know why I put that up. People saying hello and just clicking things randomly. Thank you so much for the amazing community, and I just want to say this publicly. I am incredibly honoured to have such an amazing team at ATP Geopolitics. I'm sure you say exactly the same about the guys yours as well, Greg. Just incredible people who have coalesced around what is good and right for the world. And thank you for showing your support for the campaign fundraiser, but also just for those who don't have the ability to commit any money, just what can you do instead? Commit yourselves to countering disinformation, to spreading the truth, and to spreading good old moral knowledge about what is good and right and proper in this world. If we want the world to be a better place, we need to stand up for democracy and freedom. It is not that we are warmongering war hawks. It is that, do you know what? We believe in thoroughly defending what is good and right. It is, Ukraine weren't the ones that were attacking another country. They weren't the ones invading another country. We are helping to defend moral rectitude in this world. And so I'm not some bellicose war hawk, but I do think that if we should not tolerate intolerance. I am not an intolerant person until it comes to intolerance itself. And I do not tolerate intolerance. And that is what I see Russia as representing. But anyway, over to you, Greg, for the final words.
Well, I think we can bring this full circle, my friend. And that is, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is when good men and women and boys and girls do nothing. That's where we started this stream 2 hours ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good place to end it. And together we are doing good things. Nobody wants, I don't want war, but war came to us. And because of that, we do our due diligence the best we can to partner with what is right. And what is right is to stand against genocide, to stand against evil, to stand against propaganda, and to stand for a world that can be better for our children and our grandchildren. And that is what unites us. And there's much more that unites us than divides us. And I will finally say, in kudos there with JP, if it wasn't for you guys, of course, all the support teams and the staffs and the mods and those working behind the scenes to help ATP Geopolitics, that help my channel, they're working nonstop every day. And it's so I'm just so grateful. But one step further, if it wasn't for you guys in here on Johnny's channel, ATP Geopolitics, or my channel, Johnny and I would just be talking to each other. And we want to say thank you for that. You taking the time out of your busy morning, afternoon, evening, or night to be here, to participate, to chat, to donate, to be a voice, to do your part. And when we all do our part, nothing can defeat us. I'm telling you, nothing can defeat us when we stand together strong. Just hang on and be patient. Victory's coming.
We are greater than some of our parts. So
amen.
Thank you for that. Really wonderful words. Okay, and just the last update, 20,212 euros raised, and I'll be putting in a whack into that as well. So I look forward to seeing this creep up. I actually look forward to it shooting up, but in reality, you know, we'll see this over the next sort of week or so, and hopefully we'll get to that 38,000, and we can help those that need the help. Thank you, Greg. Thank you to the live chats and everyone who's been so stalwart in their support of the channels and primarily of Ukraine. Thank you. What are those words again, Greg?
Which words?
The words we finished with. What is it? It begins with S.
I know my words. Do you know yours? Okay, Johnny, I'll just do it for you. How about this?
Slava Ukrainian.
That was it.
See you, brother. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, everyone.